Evening, guys. Let's just park the flawed ideal about affordability measures having any impact whatsoever on pathological gamblers. It simply will not, because when we deal with affordability measures, there's no point whatsoever in incepting any scheme in the front door, i.e., forcing people to give bank statements and P60s in order to have a bloody bet, when you leave the back door wide open. Because the first people that will disappear outside the back door are your most vulnerable people, your pathological gamblers, the ones that can't stop. And where will they disappear to? Inevitably, it's the black market. This is just common sense. You don't need a survey to work this out. It is common sense. You cannot embark on an ideal like this, a deeply flawed ideal, an irresponsible ideal that is being pursued by this gambling commission, where you leave the back door wide open. And of course, if you ask the average person, or should we protect problem gamblers from harm from these evil gambling companies, of course, most people will say quite reasonably, yes, of course we should protect them. But in order to do that, these affordability checks will, what they do is there is significant data out there that affordability measures are simply being refused by Britain's gamblers, especially the high-end gamblers. I mean, if you're if you're a rich guy, if you're a wealthy guy, and you're asked to produce your paperwork to a gambling company, I'm afraid, given the complexity of the average wealthy person in this country, or just rich person, or middle class, if you like, they're certainly not going to hand over their financial paperwork to any gambling companies. They're simply going to walk away from the sport. And I can tell you that many of my higher end customers are simply saying no to any request for financial data, and I don't blame them. And this is happening across the industry, where affordability checks are already being conducted, and well over 60% of those are refusing. Now, what's the net impact of all of these higher end gamblers, the ones that turn over the most money in the sport, is that it impacts directly the income to sports like horse racing and greyhound racing. They depend on good turnover from customers to feed streaming rights and things like that feed into owners, that feed into trainers. The whole industry utterly depends on these higher end gamblers. They turn over a lot more money than all of the little people that Andrew Rhodes is ignoring in his affordability checks, or at the moment he's ignoring, because if you think it is not going to go any further, you're a fool. Now, the net result, of course, to racing will be the closure of many racetracks. We will lose a lot of owners who, apart from anything else, will no longer be able to get a bet on their horse unless they submit to affordability checks and to pass them, which of course they're not going to do. We will lose all of the people in this country who have a CCJ against them, all of the people in this country who don't have a steady income. Pensioners and people like that will all be lost to these affordability measures. Why? Because they simply won't pass the initial checks, they won't supply the data, and they will just simply walk away from the regulated market. Now, a proportion of them, of course, will go to the black market, but the Gambling Commission doesn't care about that. It is pursuing this ideal with a pair of blinkers on, with the biggest blinkers ever invented, in fact, and with no care, no mind whatsoever for the net impact of that which they advocate. And the net result for sports like greyhound racing is utterly catastrophic. The sport is already teetering on the edge, with many tracks struggling to survive. This will be enough to tip many of them over the edge. So let's not forget dog racing, which has been used to be the third biggest spectator sport in this country. It's highly popular as a sport, and I believe most of greyhound racing as we know it will simply die. And another group of individuals who are going to suffer significant harm as a result of affordability measures are punters themselves. People who have bet for decades. They love to bet. No matter what the anti-gambling zealots tell you, the BBC, Sky News and the Guardian newspaper all telling us how to live our lives, the bottom line is that people love to have a bet. Now, they're going to refuse all these affordability measures, and they're going to be denied their pastime. They're going to be told how to spend their money by the state. And by the way, the state will have access to anything that you provide a gambling company, because of course the Gambling Commission will want to overlord all the statements at any point. So they will have direct access into your finances. This is something that is utterly unprecedented. But more important than all of that, perhaps, is the mental effect, the negative mental effect it will have on people when you start taking away from them things that they have always enjoyed as part of their daily routine. You're just going to take it away. So therefore, all of these people suffer significant harm. All of the people that will lose their jobs, harm. Everybody involved in racing that will no longer have any income, things to do, jockeys, trainers that will inevitably be forced out of business, that is harm. The balance of harm in order to pursue these affordability checks to protect a couple of 100,000 people, most of whom, by the way, are excluded from gambling. Oh yes, these people exclude themselves from gambling. They cannot bet inside the regulated market. Most of them have taken the right step and excluded themselves. But what we are pursuing here is somehow to protect from any more joining that list in a fictional ideal from the Gambling Commission that everybody that has a bet at any time is at risk of turning into a pathological gambler. It is simply untrue. But all of this has to be balanced against what we are going to give up in order to pursue the Gambling Commission's flawed ideals. I would argue that what we are being forced to give up suffers incredible harm for both industries and individuals, and we need to say no to these zealots. We need to make a robust statement. We will not submit to your affordability checks. Not one single check will we allow. We will not give you bank statements. We will not give you P60s. We will simply refuse. It is time to stand up, be British, and stand up for traditional values and tell these zealots no.